The heat of the day is breaking across the plains of Mamre. An old man stands in the pale dust, watching two figures walk toward a valley marked for fire, while the Lord of the universe remains behind. He is not bowing in silent submission. He is negotiating. A mortal man of dirt and ash is standing in the sand, bartering with the Creator over the exact mathematics of human survival. Picture it. The air is heavy with the impending smoke of Sodom, and yet Abraham does not merely ask for mercy. He demands a standard of cosmic justice, anchoring his plea on a title God has not yet explicitly claimed in the text. He demands that the judge of all the earth do right, but a forgotten first-century manuscript claims that at the end of his life, Abraham was pulled from his own deathbed and taken up to see exactly how that terrifying judgment actually works. See the scene in Genesis chapter 18. The King James reads it like a man stepping into a cosmic courtroom. And Abraham drew near and said, "Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked?" Stop right there. He is pressing the divine mind. He is weighing the scales of life and death in his own hands, calculating the worth of 50 righteous men, then 45, then 30, all the way down to 10. Then comes verse 25, "The anchor of the ancient world, that be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?" Read that again. The judge of all the earth. The Hebrew word is shafat. It means to govern, to vindicate, to pronounce a sentence that alters reality. Abraham is absolutely convinced that a mechanism of perfect justice exists. He believes the scales are fair. But how does a human soul actually cross from life into that judgment? For centuries, the Western Church has read this Genesis account as a beautiful, standalone moment of intercession. But there is another record. The Testament of Abraham, a first-century Jewish apocalyptic text preserved in Greek, picks up the story of this patriarch not in the dust of Mamre, but at the very end of his breath. It records the final days of the man who bartered with God, and it reveals that Abraham was not willing to die until he saw the invisible mechanics of the universe. The Testament of Abraham is not in your canonical Bible. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But the ancient Jewish minds that composed it were wrestling with the exact same mystery Abraham raised in the desert. If God is the ultimate judge, what does his courtroom actually look like? What happens to the soul the second it leaves the body? In Genesis, Abraham asked for the math of salvation. In the Testament, he is handed the cosmic ledger. The old man who stood on the edge of the physical desert is about to be taken to the edge of eternity itself. But to get him there, heaven has to send a messenger to collect his soul. Heaven requires the life of the patriarch. But the man who bargained for Sodom has one more negotiation left in him. Who do you send to claim the soul of a man who refuses to surrender it? The oak tree at Mamre is casting long shadows. An old man is resting in his final days. Genesis chapter 25 records the end of the timeline. 175 years of dust, altar building, and warfare are coming to a close. See the scene. The canonical text makes it sound like a peaceful, immediate transition. Genesis 25, verse 8, in the King James. Then Abraham gave up the ghost and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Stop right there. Gave up the ghost. The Hebrew word is gava. It means to breathe out, to expire, to yield the spirit. It implies a quiet, willing surrender. But the Testament of Abraham shatters that quiet. The ancient manuscript records that when the time came for that final exhalation, heaven sent the archangel Michael to retrieve the patriarch's soul. Michael arrives at the tent, disguised as a traveler. Abraham, ever the host, washes his feet, but the commander of the angelic armies is weeping, because he knows he has come to sever the spirit from the flesh of the friend of God. And when Michael finally reveals his identity and his grim assignment, the patriarch does the unthinkable. He says no. Read that again. Abraham refuses to die. He looks at the archangel and flatly denies the command. He refuses to hand over the breath in his lungs. This is the same man who raised a knife over his own son without flinching when instructed. But now, at the threshold of his own departure, he halts the machinery of heaven. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But watch what the text does. It creates a crisis in the heavenly courts. Michael returns to the throne of God empty-handed. He reports that Abraham refuses to surrender his soul. God does not strike the old man down. Instead, God allows a negotiation. Same desert, same man. He is bartering again. Abraham sends a message back to the Creator. He will only yield his spirit on one condition. He must first be allowed to view the entire inhabited earth and see the hidden mechanics of creation. He wants to see the universe while he is still in the body. He looked for a city. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 10 tells us exactly what was driving him all those years. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. He is not asking for a scenic tour of the clouds. He is demanding to see the architecture of justice. He wants to see where souls actually go when the breath leaves the body. And God agrees. He commands Michael to bring a chariot of light, pulled by cherubim, to lift the patriarch above the dirt of the earth. The man who stood in the dust to argue for Sodom is about to be suspended above the atmosphere. He is going to look down on the unfiltered sins of humanity. But what happens when the man who begged for mercy suddenly holds the power of divine destruction in his own mouth? High above the firmament, the wheels of a cherubic chariot catch fire. Abraham is no longer standing in the dust of Mamre. He is suspended in the atmosphere, looking down through the floor of a chariot of light, watching the crawling inhabitants of the earth. Picture it. The archangel Michael is steering the host of heaven, granting the patriarch his final condition before death. But as Abraham looks down, the text takes a violent turn. He sees murderers wielding swords in a field. He does not weep. He does not intercede. He speaks a word of judgment, and wild beasts immediately rush from the forest to tear the men apart. He looks again and sees thieves breaking through a wall. He commands fire to fall from the sky, and they are instantly incinerated. Same man, different heart. In the King James, we know exactly what divine fire looks like. Genesis chapter 19, verse 24, records the end of his old negotiation. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Stop right there. The Hebrew word for rained is mata. It means to fall in a deluge, to cast down violently. In the biblical text, only God holds the authority to cast down that fire. But suspended in the chariot, Abraham is suddenly wielding the mata. He is annihilating sinners on contact. The man who begged for mercy for the cities of the plain has become a weapon of instant, merciless execution. Watch what the text does. The Testament of Abraham records that a voice thunders from the throne of God, commanding Michael to halt the chariot and turn it away from the earth. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact, but the reasoning is staggering. God He has not sinned, and he has no pity on sinners. But I made the world, and I do not desire to destroy any of them. Read that again. The judge of all the earth is defending the wicked against the righteous. Human flesh demands immediate execution without the slow, meticulous weighing of a life. We see this divine obsession with accurate scales buried in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Sit with that. The Hebrew word for weight is eben. It literally means a stone. God delights in the exact, heavy stone of truth, measured perfectly against the deeds of a man. Abraham in the chariot is not weighing anything. He is just acting in blind zeal. God commands Michael to take the patriarch away from the physical world. If Abraham keeps looking at the earth, he will destroy humanity before their time. He must be shown a different mechanism. He must be taken to the eastern edge of creation, where the ocean of this world meets the eternal shores. He is being redirected toward the exact location where every soul must eventually stand. The chariot banks away from the spinning earth and plunges toward the threshold of the afterlife. Two distinct paths are waiting in the dark. The architecture of ultimate justice is coming into view. But what does the crossing actually look like when the chariot finally lands? The wheels of light touch down at the absolute edge of existence. Abraham steps out of the chariot and stands before a terrifying intersection. There is no earth here, no sky, no horizon of dust. There is only the boundary between the temporary and the eternal. And dominating this dark void are two immense, imposing structures. Picture it. Two physical gates are standing side by side. One is unimaginably wide, spanning the darkness, swallowing a chaotic, wailing multitude of souls. The other is painfully narrow, almost hidden from view, and only a solitary, quiet figure is passing through it. Christ will speak of this exact architecture centuries later on a mountainside in Judea. We have heard the words so often we have stopped seeing the terrifying geography behind them. In the King James, Matthew chapter 7 verse 13 reads, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way, that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat." Stop right there. We read this as a polite metaphor, a spiritual illustration of good and evil choices in daily life. But turn the English back into the Greek Christ spoke. The word for straight or narrow is stenos. It does not just mean small in dimension. It means restricted, groaning, a space so compressed it physically crushes you as you pass through. Read that again. Stenos, a crushing passage. The Testament of Abraham does not treat this as a metaphor. The ancient Jewish text claims this is a literal, geographical place. Abraham is standing at the origin of the stenos. He is watching the sheer volume of humanity being herded through the broad gate, driven like cattle toward the fire. While only one soul in 7,000 finds the narrow threshold, I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But the visual is haunting. This is the exact intersection every human must eventually cross. The Western Church has spiritualized the gates, painting them as daily moral decisions. But the ancient mind saw them as literal stone and fire at the end of breath. This is the mechanism of justice Abraham begged to see, the sorting of souls, and it is devastating. As the patriarch watches the endless river of humanity pouring into the broad gate, the text says his previous ruthlessness shatters. The man who just called down fire from a chariot is suddenly weeping violently. He realizes that the vast majority of his own descendants, the sand of the sea he was promised in Genesis, are walking straight into destruction. But the sorting is not arbitrary. Between the two gates, the text places something else, a seat of terrifying glory. Abraham watches as the souls are brought forward to face a judge before they pass through their respective gates. Look at the canonical parallel. Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. "And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away." Sit with that. The throne is always there in the biblical mind, But the Testament introduces a detail that breaks all our assumptions about who is sitting on it at this exact moment in the afterlife. Abraham looks at the judge seated on this fiery seat, preparing to see the face of the Almighty. But he does not see God. He sees a human being. A magnificent man with a crown of woven light, weeping bitterly as he looks at the broad gate, and laughing with joy when he looks at the narrow one. Who is the man seated between the gates of eternity? The crown of woven light pulses in the dark. The man seated on the crystal throne looks down at the endless flood of humanity pouring into the broad gate, and he tears at his own hair. In an instant, his grief turns to sudden, radiant joy as a single soul slips through the narrow path. Picture it. Abraham turns to the archangel Michael, demanding the name of this weeping king. The answer shatters everything the patriarch thought he knew about the afterlife. This is not God. This is not an angel. This is Abel, the first man ever murdered, the son of Adam, struck down in a dirt field at the beginning of time. Watch what the text does. The Testament of Abraham reveals a staggering legal principle. God refuses to judge humanity directly in this first heavenly court. Because humanity was deceived in a physical world, humanity must be judged by one of their own. I offer it as that, one tradition's record. But the logic traces a perfectly straight line back to the earliest chapters of our Bible. In the King James, Genesis chapter 4, verse 10, reads, "And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground." Stop right there. The English says it crieth, but the Hebrew word is tza'ak. It is not a sound of pain. It is a strictly legal term. It means to issue a formal summons, to demand a courtroom, to scream for a judge to intervene. Read that again. Tza'ak, a demand for a trial. Abel was the first human to issue a legal summons to the Creator. Now, at the edge of eternity, the ancient Jewish writers place him on the bench. The first victim is the first judge. Sit with that. It is a profound theological anchor. Christ himself echoes this exact requirement in the Gospel of John, chapter 5, verse 27. The canonical text says the Father hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. The judge must share the flesh of the judged. Flesh weighs flesh, but Abel does not render his verdicts by intuition. He is not guessing at the value of a life. As Abraham steps closer to the throne, he sees the actual mechanics of the tza'ak. He sees how the trial is conducted. Hold that image. In front of Abel stands a massive, terrifying table made of pure crystal. And flanking this table are two angels. One holds a scroll woven from fire. The other holds a scroll woven from darkness. The canonical book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 12, confirms this terrifying courtroom procedure, and the books were opened. Every breath, every hidden theft, every cup of cold water is being pulled from the scrolls. But reading the deeds is not enough. The deeds must be measured, and resting upon that crystal table is not a gavel and not a sword. It is an instrument of excruciating, absolute precision. The judge of all the earth is doing right, but the math is being handled right here, deed by deed, in front of the narrow gate. Abel sits on the throne of crystal, but the verdict does not come from his mouth alone. The table before him holds a mechanism older than the earth itself. What exactly is resting on the crystal glass? A massive set of scales rests on the center of the crystal table. It is not forged from brass or iron. It is constructed entirely of spiritual matter, blinding light on one side and dark, consuming fire on the other. Picture it. The great balance. This is the exact mechanism of the universe that Job begged for in his darkest hour. When his flesh was failing and his friends had condemned him, he did not ask for a pardon. He asked for the scales. In the King James, Job chapter 31, verse 6 reads, "Let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity." Stop right there. The Hebrew word for balance is moznaim. It is a dual noun, completely plural in its construction. It literally translates to two ears. It implies an instrument that listens, a divine scale that hears the exact vibration, the true inner resonance of a human life, and tilts accordingly. The moznaim is not a metaphor. It is a physical instrument held by an archangel. The Testament names him Dokiel, the righteous balance weigher. He stands like a pillar of light, holding the fulcrum steady with a silent, immovable grip. Abraham watches as a human soul is led to the crystal table beneath Dokiel's hand. The two recording angels step forward from the shadows. The angel on the right unwinds a scroll of light, reading out every hidden act of righteousness. The angel on the left unwinds a scroll of ash, reciting every secret sin. But reading the scroll is not the final judgment. Another figure steps out of the dark. The Testament of Abraham names him Puruel, the fiery angel, the merciless tester of works. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But his terrifying role aligns perfectly with the canonical New Testament. When Puruel takes the deeds from the scrolls and places them on the pans of the great balance, he does not just set them down, he sets them on fire. Watch what the text does. It forces the ancient reader to visualize the Apostle Paul's exact warning. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 13. The fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. Read that again. The fire tries the work. If a righteous deed was done for human praise, the fire incinerates it on the scale. It becomes weightless. The wood, hay, and stubble of hypocritical religion flash into ash and blow away. Only what survives the flame actually pushes the moznaim down. Abraham watches in absolute silence as soul after soul is brought to the table. The justice is blinding. It is horrifying. He sees the heavy, burned remains of unrepentant sin drag the left pan violently downward, condemning the screaming soul to the broad gate. He sees the rare, indestructible gold of true righteousness push the right pan down, sending a quiet soul toward the narrow passage. The mathematics are flawless. The scales cannot be bribed. The judge of all the earth is doing right, exactly as Abraham demanded in the dust of Mamre. But then, the angelic guards bring a new soul to the crystal table. It is a completely anonymous human life. The recording angels read the scrolls. The fiery angel Puruel places the deeds on the two pans. The flames erupt over the balance. But when the smoke clears, a cosmic impossibility happens. The pans do not move. The great balance freezes dead center under the archangel's hand. A soul is trapped in the dark void, unable to step backward into a living body, and forbidden from stepping forward into eternity. What happens when the weight of human sin and the weight of human righteousness end in a perfect mathematical tie? The fulcrum does not move a fraction of an inch. The fire on the left pan and the blinding light on the right pan burn down to an equal, glowing ash. The archangel Dokiel stands like a pillar of marble, holding the moznaim, but the scales are perfectly, terrifyingly deadlocked. Picture it. A single unnamed soul stands shivering before the crystal table. The Testament of Abraham says its sins and its righteous deeds have been weighed, tested by the fire of Puruel, and found to be an absolute mathematical tie. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 3 in the King James. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. Stop right there. The Hebrew word for weighed is takan. It means to equalize, to balance exactly, to adjust until the measurement is physically flawless. This is not an estimation. It is an atomic precision. The soul before the crystal table has been taken. The ledger is frozen. The fiery angel steps back. The broad gate on the left roars with the doomed. But this soul cannot be sent there. Its righteousness forbids it. The narrow gate on the right stands quietly in the dark. But this soul cannot enter, its sin bars the way. The Testament records that this perfectly tied soul is commanded to step aside from the great balance and wait in the center of the dark void. I hold this as one tradition's record, not as doctrine. But the theological crisis it creates is staggering. A dead human can no longer perform a righteous deed. Once the breath leaves the lungs, the ledger is permanently closed. The soul cannot add a single ounce of weight to the right side of the scale. It is paralyzed in the afterlife, trapped indefinitely at the threshold. Abraham is watching this solitary figure, standing in the void, waiting for a judgment that cannot mathematically come. The patriarch who demanded that the judge of all the earth do right is suddenly confronted with the nightmare of his own logic. Perfect justice has created a complete deadlock. Go back to the dust of Mamre in Genesis 18. Abraham negotiated God down from 50 righteous men to 10. He was looking for the absolute minimum weight required to save a city from the Matar, the falling fire. But suspended here, at the gates of eternity, he realizes this single, tied soul does not need 10 righteous men. It does not even need one whole righteous life. Read that again. It is tied. The scale is at 0. The soul only needs a single microfraction of weight to push the right pan down toward the narrow gate. Just one breath of surplus righteousness. But the soul has no breath left. It is bankrupt. Abraham realizes he is not just a spectator in this chariot of light. He is a living man. He still possesses breath. He is still capable of generating weight. The scales are locked, and the dead cannot alter the balance. But the man watching from the edge of the dark still has his life in his lungs. What happens when the patriarch falls to his knees and throws his own prayers onto the crystal table? The patriarch drops to his knees on the crystal floor. He realizes his breath still has weight. He is a living man, standing in the courtroom of the dead, and he begins to cry out for the completely anonymous soul paralyzed in the dark. Picture it. The man who bartered with the Creator for the cities of the plain is negotiating again. The Testament of Abraham records that as the old man prays, the archangel Michael falls to his knees beside him. The commander of the heavenly host and the father of the Hebrew faith, pleading together for a life that cannot save itself. And the Mosnaim moves. The right pan, heavy with the intercession of a living man, finally sinks. The deadlock breaks. The tied soul is released from the center of the void, led away from the fire of Purul, and guided quietly through the crushing constraint of the narrow gate. It is a staggering ancient blueprint of salvation. The soul was bankrupt. It required an outside righteousness to tip the balance. 1,000 years before the cross, this forgotten Jewish text was already looking for a savior to rig the scales of justice with grace. Look at the canonical echo in the book of Hebrews, chapter 7, verse 25. The King James says of Christ, "Seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them." Stop right there. Intercession. The Greek word is entikano. It means to happen upon someone in trouble and immediately appeal on their behalf. The tied soul in the Testament could not save itself. Abraham did it in the apocalypse of his final days, but Christ did it in the physical dirt of Jerusalem. Same scales, same terrifying judgment, but a totally different blood on the altar. Go back now to the dust of Mamre, where this film began. The heat of the day. The old man standing in the sand, watching the Lord depart toward a valley marked for fire. You have read Genesis chapter 18 100 times as a simple plea for mercy. But tonight, that scene carries a new, haunting weight. Abraham was not just trying to stop the brimstone. He was learning the mathematics of the universe. He was learning how to throw his own righteousness onto the scales for people who had none left. He was practicing the exact intercession he would eventually need at the gates of eternity. This is one reading, not the final word. The testament of Abraham is an echo, a dramatic shadow cast by the canonical truth that intercession literally alters reality. But Genesis keeps its own secrets. We know that Sodom burned. We know Abraham never found his 10 righteous men. The exact, devastating weight of a human soul remains locked in the mind of the Creator, and the desert is still holding the rest. Comment the word "watched" and subscribe to this channel because we are recovering the ancient context the Western Church set aside. Then send this video to one person who loves the deep mysteries of the Bible, but has never heard what Abraham saw between the 2 gates. The judge of all the earth will do right, but he has always left a space for the living to plead for the dying.